Thank you everyone for all the updates. I'm very excited to introduce our special guest today, but remember that we will have Q&As in Spanish and English in the end of the class. So for those are online, please remember that we have someone monitoring our chat, so feel free to ask any questions. And the people that are present, just raise your hands and we can answer those questions for you. So I'm very excited to introduce you guys our guest, Roberto Gomez. Let me tell you a little bit about him before he come up here and teach us our class. Roberto is bilingual, English and Spanish, registered safety professional with over 15 years of experience in occupational safety and health management and in industrial construction and oil field settings. Roberto has participated in the build of numerous and various type of projects across the United States. Like he had worked for WIC Group as a district safety manager, Total Safety as a safety manager, Iron Horse, Concrete as a safety director, and others. He has held several leadership positions throughout his previous employment, and he is currently serving as a project risk and safety manager with Oakland Construction. He is a lead auditor through the ISO BSI management systems. He is also an OSHA authorized construction outreach trainer, a forklift and MEWP instructor, and it's a first aid CPR aid instructor through the American Red Cross. Roberto is currently serving as a membership chair officer for the American Society of the Safety Professional, ASSP, Hispanic Safety Professional. He's also a collaborator, board member of the Hispanic Workers Safety Alliance in the Salt Lake City, Utah area, and a collaborator, board member for the Utah Suicide Prevention Coalition for the construction industry. Roberto provides leadership training, information resource policy development, consultation, and accident investigation services to all Oakland construction employees, on-site superintendents, and construction managers in their departments. So that's a little bit of Roberto. He has a long history. So Roberto, come up. We're ready for you. And just remember for the Q&A and the end of the class.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for teaching the class. It's a pleasure for me to be able to teach a little bit of what I know and the experience that we have about fall protection. I'm mainly, my experience is oil field and construction with fall protection, but I will try to keep it generalized. First of all, I would like to introduce my friend, Pedro. It's a little bit quiet, but he's good. He's always willing to help, always. Okay, let's talk about the objectives today. I'm going to be talking about why we have these fall protection standards and laws, a little bit of history of why we have to, a little bit of also statistics, accidents, citations, why we want to pay attention to the fall protection laws. What are the requirements for employees and employers? And once we know the requirements, we will discuss responsibilities. Who is in charge of what? Who needs to cover what? And also, I always have a hard time saying this word, the hierarchy of controls. I don't know if I say it right, but we will be discussing hierarchy of controls, but also hierarchy of fall protection, two different things. And I really enjoy talking about the hierarchy of fall protection. Then we're also going to be talking about the control zone access and rescue plan. Okay. My goal is to complete this class in 30 minutes. I might go over, but feel free to let me know when we run out of time. Through all the collecting of all the data, every year, OSHA collects all the accidents and all the data in regards of citations and accidents and incidents. And they have discovered that there's 4 items that they're commonly leading accidents in the industries. And it's falls, people falling either from heights or from the same level, electrocution, struck by, and caught in between. Those 4 accidents lead accidents in the industries. Falls sometimes represent a third of all the accidents in a year. If we're talking about 100% of accidents, sometimes falls represent up to 40%. And that's why we want to approach and discuss this topic, because we have a lot of brothers, sisters, friends, co-workers that are falling and their lives are being impacted dramatically because of a fall. And the best way to attack this problem, awareness, education. Bring it up to the table so we all understand and we can help each other, not only protecting ourselves, but we can also protect a brother, a sister, a co-worker, a friend who is with us, that we can let them know that, hey, that's not the way to do it. There's other ways and there's other means to protect yourself. So now that we know that OSHA has classified this as the fatal 4, we're going to concentrate only on falls. Historically, as I mentioned, falls represent a third of all the accidents. And knowing this, people have the tendency to think that falls, it's only from heights, and not necessarily. It could be sleeping, tripping, not paying attention, falling, and where you fall and how you fall is what it makes a difference. If we happen to have concrete stakes sticking up or rebar, and if you trip, probably you're not going to be injured because of the actual trip, but where are you going to be landing on? Okay, so those are the things that we have to consider on the history, knowing that a third of all those fatalities are related to a fall. That really makes a difference. Okay, these are some of the citations that have been given when it comes to fall protection. And one of the reasons why we want to mention it is because as employers, we have to make sure that we are covering all our bases and that we are not only teaching our employees how not to get hurt, but also we have to look at the other direction, how not to be cited. We don't want to be cited. On this particular citation is on the construction industry, but 3,704 citations have been given in the last year for fall protection issues, related fall protection. And when it comes to training, 1,132 citations were issued for not having training records on safety. Anytime they come and they do an inspection into a work site, and they see Pedro walking on the roof with no harness, and they ask, let me see his training records. How do he know? How you make sure that he knows that he needs to use a harness up there? We don't have training records. That's when we receive citations. And unprotected sites, as employers, we have to make sure our employees are protected. Are we protecting them on those leading edges? Are we taking care of our people or any other contractors entering into the work area that we are in control of? And if we're not, we can receive citations, 664 citations for not protecting those falling edges, or not having written certification records for training. They might say, yes, we do have training. Okay, show me those training records. And when we can't produce those training records, they also receive citations, 361 last year. And also it comes for roofing. And you can see the pattern. How many citations that we have been giving away? Now, when we're talking about in the whole industry, the fatality work injuries by event, on this graphic, you will see the amount of fatalities that we have experienced on the last year when it comes to, in comparison to 2017, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Most every year, it's more than 1,000 deaths, fatalities related to work, but 1/3 of those are fall related. And you can see 3 different ones. You see the ones that are falls at the same level, slips and trips. You also see falls to a lower level, meaning that you were in heights and you fell to the lower level. And the other ones that you can barely see at the bottom of the graphic in blue, those falls are on the same level. But still, if you combine those 3, it represents 1/3 of all the fatalities nationwide. This is why we have to talk about fall protection, to bring awareness that we're not exempt. Accidents happen. And of course, if it's an accident, we're not planning to have an accident. We don't wake up that morning and think, I think that I want to fall today. It will happen. It could be either because we're not paying attention, because we feel complacent, because we have been doing this too long, or because we're not aware that this is dangerous, that you can fall. You haven't received any training. Okay. Now, this is from more local, from the Utah, UOSH. They give us accidents by event in 2022. And we can see highlighted the ones related to falls. From an elevation, we ended up having a total of 90. This is in the state of Utah only. And slips, trips, and falls, 158. And if you notice the numbers, if you combine these two, it's over 230 easily. That's why it represents 1/3 of all the accidents that we have. Now, this is 2022. What about 2023? This was released a couple months ago from UOSH. From an elevation, 45 so far, released back in May. We haven't updated these numbers, but slips, trips, and fall, 104 already. And so now that we know that we can be cited, that we can have fatalities, and that is also happening in the state of Utah, do we want to address this? There's too many regulatory agencies. It could be federal, it could be private. We have MSHAs, we have OSHAs. We also have counties issuing regulations. Sometimes we come to a client and the client says, well, hold on. In my job site, this is how we address fall protection. Or it could be the employer who said, nope, I don't know where you have been working, but this is not how we do it at Oakland. This is how we do it. So those regulatory agencies set different rules and regulations when it comes to fall protection. We just have to be aware of what is the rules. I'm going to be working with you, my employer, on this particular project with this client on this city under this regulatory agency, OSHA, MSHA. Once we know what are the rules, we want to meet the most strict, the more strict, and we can meet all the rest of the regulatory agencies. So we can have also manufacturer regulations. And I'm going to give you an example. If you're using a boom lift, MUP, mobile elevating working platform, there are some manufacturers that says, oh, you don't have to tie off in a scissor lift. But then you come and work for a client in Southern Utah that says, nope, if you bring a scissor lift on site, you need to tie it off. Two different regulations. So you have to pay attention. Is this a rule from OSHA, MSHA, the client, the owner, my employer? And then decide, what are you going to do? Now, what is the criteria? When, how do we know when we have to protect our employees? Anytime they're working 6 feet above the lower level, if they're exposed to a fall, 6 feet or more, they have to be protected. But not only for people falling, also from objects falling and striking an employee down below, falling objects, or tripping over. Do we have a mess? Do we have cords and materials and tools all over in the ground and people is going to be tripping and falling? And also when we have holes, shafts, places where people can fall through and go through the next level. So we have to, anytime we have one of those 4 items, 6 feet or more, holes, tripping hazards, and falling objects, we have to protect our employees from getting struck or from falling. Okay. Now, how do we, what is the responsibilities? As an employer, we have to assess and determine how I'm going to be exposing my employee. What do I need to do to protect him? If they're going to be working on a roof, are they going to be working on a balcony? Are they going to be working on a scaffold? Once the employer, that's his responsibility to assess what's the risk. I have to determine what controls are available for my people. That's my responsibility to protect my guys. And not only once I select, I also need to provide any equipment that they might be needing to get protected. If it's handrails, handrails. If it's harnesses, I need to provide those to them so they can be protected from those holes, those elevations, and also protecting those working below so nothing is going to be dropping and striking them. And training. Training is crucial, is vital. Bringing awareness and giving them the knowledge will allow them to identify hazards in the future. And many of us think, well, it's common knowledge, common sense. Believe me, not everyone has the same common sense. You might see people walking on roofs and they don't realize that they are a danger until you brought it up and you teach them. And worse yet, you let them know that there's a law that says that they shouldn't be doing that. And sometimes they're not aware that there's such a thing. Okay. The hierarchy of controls, that's many of us are familiar with these controls, but that's the way that we attack a hazard, a risk, in the order that we are going to be addressing this risk, how to prevent, And obviously on the very top, when you see this hierarchy of controls, you see that the top portion of this upside down pyramid, it's the most effective. And the bottom of this image, it's showing the less effective controls that are available. We can always eliminate. And if we're talking about painters, and they're going to be painting with a petroleum-based paint, is there the possibility to get a water-based paint? And we eliminate the fumes, the flammability, using a respirator. So elimination is the number one. We have to look at ways of controlling the hazard that eliminate the hazard at all. Substitution, similar to the paint. I have 2-3 different paints. What can I substitute to eliminate the hazard and bring only the less harmful? Okay. The engineering controls are those items that have been manufactured to eliminate and control the hazard. Ventilations, vacuums, attachments for tools, things that are designed already and manufactured to control a hazard and minimize the exposure. Okay. We also have administrative controls. Those are policies and rules and employee manuals that tells you what to do, how to do it. And in that way, you can minimize the risk. And ironically, at the bottom, it's PPE, personal protective equipment. Is the less effective. Why? Because it depends on training and attitude. Is the employee willing to wear that PPE right? That he knows how to do it? That he knows how to inspect it? That he knows how to take care of it? It's a good standing PPE. That's why it's the less effective method of controlling hazards. It is better to eliminate, substitute, and use engineering controls rather than relying only on personal protective equipment. Understanding this hierarchy of controls, there is this other one, the hierarchy of fall protection. Same as the hierarchy of controls, where we are looking to eliminate, substitute, and use the engineering controls, we have the first one, number one, hazard elimination. That means that, do we have the ability to work from the ground level and do the work without exposing ourselves to a fall? That means extensions for tools, and I can do all the work from the ground. I don't have to climb a ladder. I don't have to go up into the scaffold. Okay. Or better yet, can I bring the work down and assemble it at the ground level? If it's possible, we are eliminating the hazard. We don't have it, period. Can the work be done on the ground? That's number one. That's eliminating, hazard elimination. Number two, that will be the passive measurements that we can use, like guardrails, and anytime we are going to be exposing what items we can set around to impede and prevent anyone from falling. That will be the passive fall protection. Now, if we're moving to fall restraint, that's the one, and sometimes people get confused, fall restraint and fall arrest, two different things. Fall restraint will have certain length that will prevent you from getting close to the edge and falling. So the restraint will prevent you from falling. The fall arrest will stop you from hitting the ground once you fall. And when workers and employees and coworkers understand the difference, obviously nobody wants to fall. Everyone wants to prevent a fall. So are they choosing to use fall restraint or fall arrest? What do you want to use? How we want to protect our people? Okay. The next one will be the fall arrest system, what I was talking about. A regular lanyard, similar to this, that is going to give you a fixed length and will allow the employees certain movement, because he has a length that it will let them move around, do the work, but if they fall, it will be catched by this equipment, okay, versus the fall restraint. We also have positioning devices that will allow people to secure themselves to the work, allow them to have free hands to do the work, and the system will sustain them and position them where they need to be. That's the fall arrest system. Now, if we move to the next one, the administrative controls, those are the signs, the barricades, things that are going to be visual for the people, but in reality, they're not going to be stopping you from falling or giving you that restriction that you need to stop. When we apply this hierarchy of fall protection, it's easier to gradually think about eliminating. If we go to this graphic, eliminating the hazard, or using the passive fall protection, handrails, or fall restraints that will prevent you, allowing you to fall. But then we move to the fall arrest, which is going to catch you after a fall. And then we have administrative controls. Now, what are the items that we need to include on the training? We want to teach our guys to identify hazards. We're going to teach them all the different scenarios where they're going to be encountering, depending on the work activities that they're going to be doing. And what are the most common hazards that they're going to be facing? Once they recognize the hazard, then they will have the option to select the equipment that they're going to be using. Do they need fall restraint or they need fall arrest? Do we have available guardrails, hole covers? So they need to select first, select first the items that they're going to be using, the equipment that they're going to be using, then inspect. That's what we call the 5 steps of safety. Select the fall protection, inspect the fall protection. Then we're going to be set up the fall protection, meaning how I'm going to put it on, how I'm going to be adjusting, how tight, how loose I'm going to wear it. And once I put all the straps and all the belts, it comes to the next one, the usage. Keep it that way the whole day. Don't start losing straps. Don't start removing parts, because if you fall, it's not going to be on the best way to control the hazard of falling. And the last one, how to care for it. We need to understand that this equipment has a life, and sometimes they have served and it's time to retire them, especially when they get exposed to a fall. We can't keep using them. because it comes with some indicators that this has been exposed to a fall and you have to remove it out of service. But it's hard work out there. They sweat and sometimes they stink too. And we have to, manufacturers will tell you how to care for it, how to wash it, how to clean it, and how to prevent when we are storing this fall arrest system, how to prevent from damaging it. Are we going to lay it on top of a gas can? Are we going to expose this to flammable? Are we going to put it on top of sharp edges like skill saws, drills? So the care talks about the storage, cleaning, and have it available for next day. And we come again, we select it, we inspect it, we set up, use it, and care again. It's an everyday thing that we have to do. Are these things cheap? No, they're not. You can find them in all different prices, but when your company it's investing on the safety of your employees, you want to take care of these things to make sure that they have it available so they can use it the next day again. And always being available to save their lives. Now, the conventional fall protection that we use in the industry, the first one will be guardrails. You set up a guardrail and nobody's going to be falling unless they climb the guardrail, right? But they're going to be protected. As long as they remain behind the guardrail, they are protected. Now, it's guardrail not feasible. We can also use netting systems. But remember, guardrail will prevent you from falling. Nets will catch you after a fall. Two different things. Then we also have the fall arrest system, personal fall arrest system that consists on 3 different items. It will be the full harness that they have to wear properly in order to work correctly. And they also have a connector. The connector goes from the anchor point to the harness. And that's why we call it connector. There's too many different kinds. We have fixed length connectors, we have retractable connectors, and we have nylon retractable connectors, or we have cable retractable connectors that are good for leading edges. It's not the same to fall in a metal deck that is sharp on the edges with a nylon bait that can be breaking through that sharp of the metal, that when you fall using a cable that is rated for that cut on the metal. So during the assessment that the employer is doing, they need to realize, yes, they're going to be exposed to a fall, but it's going to be a fall that they can use a fixed lanyard or a retractable, a nylon or a cable. It's a leading edge. We do that assessment and then we provide all the equipment and we teach them how to use it, how to put it on, how to connect it. Quite often, the way that we identify that someone hadn't received training on fall protection is because they're wearing it backwards. They connect the top portion at the anchor point, and they put the 2 hooks in the back of the harness. Or sometimes I have seen it wearing the harness upside down. That's when you know that that person haven't received the proper training. They just receive the harness, put it on, go to work. Are we taking care of our responsibility as an employer to protect that employee? Probably not. Did we give him the training and he wasn't paying attention and he doesn't know how to put it on? Probably, but we need to take the time. So guardrails, safety nets, personal fall arrest systems, and hole covers. Those are the things that we can do to protect our people. That's the conventional fall protection that we can find out there. Now, when it comes to guardrails, there's certain regulations that we have to comply with. If it's a pre-manufactured handrail, easy. They already come with the right measurements. We don't have to worry about it. But if it's something that we're gonna put together on the job site, we have to be aware that there's regulations about the height, the parts, the elements that have to constitute for a proper handrail. We have 4 elements. We have the stanchions or post. We have the top rail, mid rail, and toe board. And regulation says that the top rail has to be between 39 and 45 inches. Most of the people, they put it at 42 because it's right in the middle, and it will meet both requirements, but they give you that discrepancy of put it lower all the way to 39 or 45 because we have different sizes of people. We have some taller individuals and shorter individuals. So we need to determine where the top rail needs to be at. If you put it at 39 with a guy who height of 7 feet, the top rail will be below the waist. And he will be exposed to a fall. That's why it has to be adjustable. Then the mid rail has to be in between the working surface and the top rail. It's a common practice on the industry that we see that be set at 21 inches because that's the middle of 42, but that is not the standard. It's a common practice. And also the toe board. Many of us forget about the toe board because we believe it's not needed. Toe board has to be at least 3.5 inches tall, and it's to prevent anything from rolling out of that working platform and striking anyone. Okay. Also, the force that you can apply on the top rails and the mid rails. Top rail has to support at least 200 pounds horizontal force. Why? Because every time we see a handrail, the first thing that we do is come and lean on it, look down, and we apply that horizontal force. So the top rail, 200 pounds, mid rail, 150 pounds, and toe board only have to support 50 pounds of force. Now, also the post or the extensions supporting the top rail, mid rail, and toe board cannot be more than 8 feet apart. Once you extend more, the strength of the top rails and mid rails are getting weaker. That's why the maximum size is 8 feet. Okay, that's for guardrails. Now, when it comes to netting, we have many different rules. I'm not going to mention all of them, but I'm going to mention that it has to be clear enough and it has to be set to prevent that if an employee falls in the net, it's going to be flexible and it's going to be stretching, that we prevent that employee hitting or contacting anything below. Okay. The net has to be 25 feet or higher below the work place. And depending on the net, can be more or bigger than 6 inches, the opening of the net. Okay. And not every net works for fall protection. It might be possible that the netting system that the circus use is not the most optimal for fall protection. But we have to be aware that if you're going to use it for fall protection, it needs to come with a test from the manufacturer saying that it's for fall protection and it has been tested to support this force. Why? Many of us know that distance, weight will increase the velocity of impact. So that net has to come with a tag saying it's for fall protection, and it will support a maximum mesh that, sorry. It has to come with the tag, the label, but also the manufacturer has to test it to withstand a minimum of 17,500 pounds of impact of resistance. And it has to be tagged, and it has to say that. And if you can't read it, you shouldn't be using it. Okay, so guardrails, netting. Now, personal fall arrest, I already covered that, consists of a harness, the connector, and there's many different connectors and positioning devices that we have to know how to protect ourselves. Okay? If we're going to be teaching an employee, we have to make sure that he understands their options and how to put them on. Okay. Hole covers. Do we want to protect our people from falling through a hole? When we are building or putting together a building, and now they come with elevator shafts or ventilation shafts or electrical shaft, two hazards. If it's big enough, they can step into the hole and fall all the way through the next level, or they can kick something, a piece of debris, a tool that might be falling through the hole and striking another employee below. So when we are looking at hole covers, we have to make sure that they support 2 times the weight of the employees and the equipment intended to be put on. If it's going to be a regular floor, they have to support at least 2 times the weight intended. If we're going to be having only employees, we need to calculate how many employees they're going to be stepping on. It's strong enough to hold 2 times that weight. Also, must be secure. Why? Because there's a lot of traffic. People will be passing by, walking, accidentally kicking them, and they can move it out of place, exposing the hole again. So they have to secure, they have to be secure in place. There's different types. There's ones that you can purchase, different sizes, and they come with all the devices underneath to secure the whole cover, or you can make them yourself with a piece of plywood, as long as it's strong enough to hold twice the weight intended, that you can secure it. And also, it has to be a color, it has to be visible that it's a whole cover. Most of the time, it will be a different color, high visibility color. But if you're going to be making your own covers, it has to say whole. People need to know that that piece of plywood on the ground, it's covering a hole. That's why we have to paint it, and we have to write it, and we have to secure it in place. Why? Because we have quite often people come thinking that they're cleaning, remove the plywood, turn around and leave, or worse yet, turn the plywood and walk into it and fall. But if it's secure, that is not going to be happening. Okay. Another thing that we can do is control the access. If I'm going to be having 10 guys working on this scaffold, do I want people working below the scaffold with the risk of dropping materials, tools? Do I want to barricade the area to prevent anyone from walking under or work underneath? So when we're using these tapes, we have to make sure that we also use signs. Who owns it? What's the hazard? How can I get a hold of you if I need to enter into your work area? And we might be putting guardrails or simple tape. But if we're going to be putting tape, we have to have signs to indicate what's the hazard, how to contact me, and indicate what is the problem. Okay. And also, part of the controls for the access zone is putting nets. If I'm going to be working on a working platform up there and I have the risk of dropping materials or tools, we can set a net inside the working platform and nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to fall. A piece of plywood. None of my materials, none of my tools are going to be falling. Or I don't have that flexibility. I can wear some of those tools, restraints that I can attach to my belt. And if I accidentally drop it, it's not going to go all the way down because it's going to be restrained inside my working platform. Okay. So that's give us the how to secure tools and materials inside the working area. And we prevent an employee or another person passing by. Sometimes our pedestrians not really involved into the work that we're doing. And we have to protect them from falling objects. Could be debris, materials, tools. Are we using nets or are we using tools to secure belts to secure the tools? Now, anytime we are working, exposing an employee to a fall, we also need to have a fall rescue plan. Why? It's the guidance, is all the instructions that people is going to be receiving to know that if anything goes wrong, what are we going to do? Who is in charge? How are we going to be getting Roberto down? How is Pedro coming down if he happened to fall and he's going to be hanging with his harness? Do we have the equipment to rescue him? How fast do we need to rescue him? What is the risk of not rescuing him fast enough? And that guidance is going to give you all the details, and those have to be job site specific. Are you working inside or outside? Heights on the 5th floor or just a regular roof? Residential. How are we going to get that employee down if he fell? Okay. And it's a require. It has to be specific for the job site that we are working. So we have to have it in place, and we have to work on that rescue plan to make sure that we have it. We discuss it with the employees, but also because it's a requirement. It has to be site specific. Regardless if you're working on the roof of a residential project, or if we are working inside of a manufacturing facility, or if you're in construction building a high rise. We have to have a rescue plan. Do we have questions? Comments? Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned that there's like standards on the net, and that if you don't get that little label on it, don't use the net. What about the other equipment, like the harness and stuff? Are there ones that have been tested, or are there counterfeit ones out there, and how do you?
Most of the manufacturers will give you labels, and labels will tell you who put it together, the capacities, sizes, and also at the very end, it comes with instructions how to determine when it needs to be taken out of service. And also it gives you inspection tag. These babies have to be inspected by a competent person annually and by the user prior to be used. So these tags will give you information on if it's a legit, because it will come with this special tag that you can, you can be technical and come with a gun that will read all the information from it. But if you don't have that technology, you can come and grab all the numbers and you can research. This particular harness is a DBI Sala. It's a 3M device. And this company is well known on the industry to produce a lot of the safety items for workers. So DBI Sala, trustable. But if I come across with other brands that I'm not aware, and if I'm going to be in charge of buying all this equipment for my guys, I will do some research to see if it's a legit company and if they are certified. And I'm going to give you a tip. Most of this equipment has to be approved by the American National Standard Institute. And they will give you a number, a standard that will say if this equipment meets the requirements of the American National Standard Institute. And if it meets, that means that they have been approved. Is there in the market items that are not necessarily counterfeit? Probably. But that's why for many of the employers, it's easier to go to a well-recognized brand that they know that it's a, and you go through a well-established establishment that you know that they're going to be selling real stuff and not the flea market that you never know where that stuff coming from. Did I respond to your question?
Yeah.
Any other?
I would follow up with the question, like, what's the difference between, this fall protection versus like a mountain climbing stuff? Now, I'm assuming you can't use, like a mountain climbing harness, construction site. And
I don't know that much about mountain climbing, but I know that it's not rated by the American National Standard Institute for construction or fall protection on different industries. So it has to be rated for fall protection, work related. Remember that Pedro and myself, we wear tool bags that add an additional weight. And sometimes we wear hammers, pliers, nails, screws, drills. That extra 50 pounds plus the equipment of another 30 pounds, that add up to the falling aspect. And if you're not using equipment that is rated for that type of weight, fall, and impact, that makes a difference. The American National Standard Institute says that at least it has to support 3,800, if I'm not mistaken, 3,800 pounds of impact. And probably you don't need that much of an impact on a climbing equipment. So I don't know if I respond to your question, but that will be my information. And
curious, based on your stats, are workers that are getting hurt from falls, are they falling from tall distances or from like 6-foot ladders?
all of them. It could be people falling at the same level, either tripping or slipping, or using a small ladder that is not even 3 or 4 feet high, or people who is working at heights more than 6 feet. Those are the stats, the statistics. And I'm assuming that is the ones from the Utah UOSH or the nationwide. I took the first graphics that I was showing, I took them from the labor statistics, the United States labor statistics. And the other one is from only from Utah. And it's
in your experience, like you're 30 feet in the air, you're gonna hard sub, right? But you hear about workers like, oh, I'm only gonna be, 6 feet in the air, so I'm not worried about it, right?
right. It's all about if you want to be protected and how confident sometimes you feel that, oh, I probably don't need it. If you're going to be above 6 feet, you do need it. It's not only to protect you, but it's also to protect the company from getting cited, from letting you work, exposing yourself to a fall. Yes.
Based on my experience in the construction field, and when you give the employees, for example, like all the trainings, everything they need to be protected, all the training, but you go to the job site and then you just and then you get expectations, to be like, this supervisor came from you or something, whatever, and then your employees are not used to the artists, the employees are like working wearing whatever it is wearing. Do you see that commonly?
Yes. The question is, even though you give your employees the training and the equipment, sometimes they get caught not doing it or not using it. If I see it, yes, we see it all the time. And it could be for many different reasons. Sometimes we offer the training, but we offer the training in one language that they can understand. And they give you the yes treatment to everything you're saying, but in reality, they're not getting any of the stuff. They just hear the blah, 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 blah. Or they just simply not paying attention. They don't care. They're not catching anything while you are teaching them. Or it's simply not available. The employer don't see the need to train the employees. So when you train them and you have give them the equipment and you catch them not doing it, it's still happening, and it could be a problem of attitude or understanding. When it's either or, as an employer, you are the controlling entity of your work site. So you can be cited for what Pedro is doing out there. Even though you have training records, even though you give him the training, if he's not doing it, you are the controlling entity inside your job site. So you can be cited. So it's in your best interest to invest time and go around, do audits, make sure that Pedro is wearing fall protection, is working behind the handrails to be in compliance. So not only Pedro is safe, but also I'm not facing any penalties. Did I respond to your question? Okay, any other questions, any other comments? No, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, thank you, Roberto, for this informative class. It was very interesting and helpful. I think I learned so many things, new things. So for ending our class, we have upcoming webinar with Lawrence. Oh, there we go. So that's gonna be October the 2nd at 10 a.m. So make sure to register, come here or online. We're gonna be streaming online as well. And that's all for today. So thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
So great, I didn't look at that once.